YouTube is now on. Hello, YouTube. We're going to start the recording right now. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Tech Down Over. This is our first show in about 3 weeks. We've both been busy with work and travel and other things, so we have missed this chance to get together and share with you all that we do. Now, don't get too excited. I know we do have really exciting lives, but here we go. Jeff Blanchard's right next to... Right, I got the right side. The right side, right there. 7,000 miles away. He's a good friend. He's a good guy. And don't forget to watch his other show, The Weekly Catch-Up, with Jeff Holbrook. That's on Wednesdays at an ungodly time, but they record it.
Yes. 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock my time in the evening, and I think it's 6 a.m. Your time, or no, actually 3 a.m. your time in California.
3 a.m. That's a really hot podcasting time for insomniacs.
Yes, that's right. We get tens of thousands of people watching. Well, no, me and him watch anyway. So I think it's only us two, to be quite honest.
Here we go. And we are back. You know, Jeff, last year, it's been a long week. Last week. It's been a long week. Last week, we were at the Lectora user conference. Now, you also are a user of Lectora. I'm a user. I'm on the advisory board for the company. And I love the product. It's a great product. And, you know, the people there are just so darn nice. As a whole, the company is incredibly cordial. They're very technical and professional, and yet they're a lot of fun to be around. They're just great folks. We had a wonderful time, and you know, maybe you should ask your management to send you there next year. I think it'd be fun.
Yes,
you'd probably really enjoy it.
I think I would do, because I just do love the Lectora product, especially the later versions. I'm still working on some old projects that I sometimes have to go into version 9, and you just don't realize how much they've improved. Like, they were good then, but it's just so much more intuitive now. And I, to be quite honest, I've got to do this thing on version 9, and I can't remember how to do it. It's how to score the scoring on the course, and I've got a problem with it, and it's just so hard going backwards.
Well, you have to set up your
so much easier.
You set up your assignable unit at the top. That enables scoring, and then in your course you have to, I think, enable tracking or something like that.
Yeah,
and then when you output, you have to have, and then in your course you set whatever points you want and everything else. The rest is pretty much on. You have your success and failure pages. But it's a great tool, and version 17's come a really long way from 9, as you know. And now they announced the new. Well, they didn't announce when it's coming out, but they showed a lot of the new features. We were joking in one of the podcasts because I was interviewing John. I said, "You're the only person there without an NDA," because he was telling all the stuff that they're planning. It's not even coded yet, but he was giving out a lot of the stuff they're planning on doing. But also in the next version, they will have a full timeline, which will be really nice.
Okay.
So you'll
That'd
have
be great.
Lectora with a timeline for transitions and objects. So when things come on screen and come off, it's easy.
And what I like with theirs is the online version, which to me it's the only truly collaborative tool out there at the moment, because everyone else, it's always a fear that somebody else has got part of your thing and it's not updating properly. But the way they do it is great. So if I'm working on chapter 3 and you're working on chapter 2, you can't go and work on my chapter while I'm working on it, and it tells you who's doing what. So we can all 5 or 6 people can be working on the project at the same time, whereas in other ones it's always different versions, and you've got to make sure you've got the right version, and just Lectora just makes it so much easier. So
it does, and they're going to make improvements to that to probably open it up to other databases, so you're not just on their database. If you want it in your firewall or on Dropbox or something, there's some exciting stuff that'll probably come soon. So I'm looking forward to that. And at one point, maybe this year, they'll hit a convergence where the online and the desktop are exactly the same. That's going to be cool.
That will be, because they're pretty much the same. It's just the collaborative things, but they're quite similar. So it's not one where it's totally different. You know how to work it.
Yep.
And to me, it's not that slow. Whereas you'd think being online, it'd be a little bit slower, but it's not, because let's face it, when you're doing e-learning projects, you don't need the speed as you do a lot of other things, because you're not flying, you're not typing like people program who know what they're doing. You're just doing a little bit, so you don't need it to. If there's half a second delay, it's not a problem. But I haven't found the sort of delay in that anyway.
Yeah.
So
And also
really
they're using Amazon, so the Amazon data world is fast. It's super, super fast. Even CourseMill, their LMS, they've now got down to, like, it used to be 100 threads, now it's 1,000 threads per second. I mean, per reads and writes. So they've really sped this thing up. I mean, dramatically. It's, and so they've improved. They're getting better and better and better. So it's kind of exciting. I really like meeting the guys there and seeing them. And actually, when I come back, I'm just excited. I want to start getting more into coding again. Yeah. So it's a lot of fun. Well, Jeff, last week I did something I have never done in my whole life, and it wasn't good. It wasn't good. I bought that new Panasonic GH5. We bought two of them. I have one. The other one is still good. Still, that kind of gives you an idea. I don't think you've ever seen this backpack, but I have a low pro tactical backpack, which is a camera backpack, really for hiking or taking around. It's a really nice backpack. I tend to only use it one arm, so I just like sling it over one side. Well, I was showing Danielle, who people probably remember. She does a lot of our setup here, and she's done some switching, and she helps out with our media and the shows. She's really great. Well, anyway, I was showing her that the Low Pro has a secret compartment on the side. You just flip it open, and you can pull the camera right out. And I did, and I showed it to her, and she thought that was really a cool feature. And then her and I went off, and I was showing her some of the tricks. So she just bought the camera too. So I was talking about some of the features it had. And then I went back like an hour later after doing some other stuff. And I noticed, the camera bag was closed. So I opened the whole camera bag and put the camera in. I didn't close the side slot.
You just work with the bag.
And I didn't notice it at first because I picked up the bag, but I didn't sling it. I just picked it up, took it to my office, sat it down. Everything was fine. I never even noticed, because it was on the other side of me, that the opening was still open. Though you can't tell because the flop's closed. So it looks like it's closed. I slung it over my shoulder, and I see this black object flying out. I'm like, oh no! Clark was behind me. He couldn't get to it. I'm like, oh, dunk, dunk, dunk. It hit hard. And the lens, that brand new 12 to 60 millimeter f2.8, almost $1,000, sliced off the camera. The mount just broke right off, and I went, no, oh no. It was bad. So I have, in the camera is the mount. So I got rid of I took the mount out, and then I picked up the lens. The lens seems fine. It didn't look like it broke or even moved out of position, but the mount ripped off. And when you see how cheap they are, and when they put those mounts together, it's really irritating. I mean, my fault for dropping it, which I've never done in my life before. I've never dropped a lens or camera. But when it fell, if it had been a decent lens mount where it's metal both sides, not just plastic on the inside is kept together by 3 little loops and really fish wire. That's it. And I was going, you've got to be kidding. That's it. And it just sliced right off in a second, came right off. So I'm hoping, I'm sending the lens to Panasonic today in Texas for repairs. And I'm hoping they can put it together real quickly. It doesn't cost a fortune. And it's just that it broke off. They can do a quick test and everything's working again. But I was so depressed. It's like, I broke a lens. Oh.
And you didn't just drop it, you threw it.
I threw it came out because I went whoop, dunk. It's like, and it went probably about 5 feet in the air, landed on the floor, and just dong dong. But when it hit, that's where it sheared. It literally sliced it right off. That's bad. That's bad.
Well, that must be. Well, you got two. Now you can get the other one out of the box and start using.
Well, no, the camera was fine.
Oh, the camera was
fine. That
fine.
camera took a 5-foot flying jump out of my bag, bounced. It works perfect, 100% fine. I tested 3-4 other lenses on it, daylight, nighttime, settings, perfect, no problem. Tested the mics, everything was good. Just the lens, just complete. So if that had been a different brand of lens, it probably wouldn't have broken.
I've been seeing still the Panasonic GH5 still is the talk of the town, and I've been seeing a few YouTube videos, and there's one from F Stoppers, which was a really good one to have a look. And he's done sort of a review of. He said he still loves the camera, and like everybody else, like everything, there's never going to be the perfect camera. If there is, there would only be that one around, but for most part it's an excellent camera. But there was a few, he had 10 points that he would hope Panasonic fix, and the things I think you'd be interested in as well. So it's things like when you use, one of the things was when when you use a variable frame rate, the autofocus doesn't work at all.
That's right.
So you can't point and click, and then when it's switched on, you can understand it won't focus. But they said things like that, why it won't do that as well. And also, and then the thing I'd noticed on the old ones, like the auto ISO, fine using the auto ISO because a lot of us do, but in our older Panasonic cameras, when you've got auto ISO, in the bottom corner it tells you what ISO you're using. And it's quite handy because sometimes, yes, you might use auto, but you say, well, I'm not going to go below a certain or above a certain ISO. And you can see, but in the new one, in that, when you have auto ISO, it doesn't tell you anymore. It just says auto ISO.
Right, but I thought there's a feature, I think there's I'm maybe getting confused with a different camera, but I thought you could put a max ISO limit.
I think you can, but it still is like people still need to know, well, what's it filming at, even though they like to still see, oh, that's what it's doing in there. Because I do sometimes when you not too sure and says, oh, that looks good, I'll remember that, when it helps you a little bit just to see the things on there. And one of the annoying things that they were saying with, you've got the 3 pre-programmed settings, so you do C1, C2, C3. Right. Well, it doesn't seem to remember everything, whereas it'd be great if it does, because every time you switch on and off, the shutter speed and all that goes to the last thing that you had set up in the camera, where you might have your camera themes and that it will remember. So it tends to make those 1, 2, and 3 useless unless it would save everything.
So in essence, the C is really close 1, 2, and 3. We're not quite there yet, but you got almost all of it, not custom.
That's right. But it said it's a great thing if it did, but that makes it sort of unusable a bit if it doesn't save everything, because if you've got to check this and that, well, you don't end up using it. You just end up doing that as well. And one of the other things was saying you lose the audio when you're using variable frame rate.
That's right, that's because I could see that. That's very hard to keep audio in a variable frame rate.
But what they're saying sometimes, and I thought, well, why? What's the point? Why would you need that? And they were saying, well, the camera does do that when you're doing it from 60, and then you want to take it down to 30 frames, it still has the audio. You can do that, but when you put it in variable frame rate, it stops it. So say sometimes they might want to record in something and just flick between the two and be able to still have the audio. But as I said, all these little things that sound like there'd be all firmware updates, and like one they were saying about the 48 frames per second that they want to do, so they can have a standard 24 frames a second, but have a bit of slow motion on that. But one of the big things I agreed with that I think you'd probably notice was the battery grip. With the battery grip, it says when you've got the battery grip in, it says in the viewfinder BG for battery grip and shows you what the battery life is for that. But you can't tell what the power level is on the other battery in the camera. You have to take the battery grip battery out before it will flick to the other one.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. I didn't pay attention to it because also the battery lasts so long usually that. But you're right. I wonder if there's a menu setting that lets you do that. I'm not sure.
And there was one of the other things was like if you've got the battery grip on and the 2 batteries, if the battery goes flat from one of them, it seamlessly flicks to the other one and keeps recording. But if you're on the battery grip and the camera battery's going and you want to hot swap the one from the battery grip and it's not totally flat, it switches off for a second, then flicks on. You see, so you can't do that. Whereas, because sometimes people, when they're in productions, they might say, "I'm going to go and charge the batteries,"
Right.
and just flick it out when it's not completely dead. But as I said, but the camera does do a nice hot swap when one battery is flat, but not when it's not. So these are all just little things that the people said they're great, but all the ones who really are the high end users really want. And there was like the anamorphic filming on that. They said, yeah, that's great that it does that, but on the camera you're forced to have to go to an editor to stretch it out to see it how it should be. Whereas when you're looking in the camera, you're seeing it all squashed up. It'd be nice if they had it so you could see it just normally in the camera's viewfinder.
I was watching Peter Gregg's video on the 6K shooting, the photo shooting, and he said it's really great. It takes a long time from camera because it's slow to actually do that kind of editing. Even though the camera is very fast on firmware, it's a little slow to output it, then get to the next one, output it, get to the... But he said nothing reads it. You have to find certain software that can read it. And he found one called Convert It that it's pretty hard to find, or Convert version 4. And I bought it. I haven't actually loaded it yet because I got it right before we left. But again, it does a good job of actually reading those files, because otherwise Lightroom doesn't know what to do with them. If you download them, it doesn't quite work right. So it's not read by everything, meaning that they have some interim format. But the end result is amazing. They look beautiful. I mean, every single shot is basically in focus, perfect, and looking good. So
I'm sure that there will be, because it's such a popular camera, Lightroom cannot ignore it. So you'd think that like when I got the FZ1000, when I first got that, the raw files would not. I've said that would not read in Lightroom.
Yeah,
and
I remember that.
Oh, what's wrong? And by the time I was figuring out, what's wrong? What can't I do? Lightroom updated, and then you could read their raw files. And because everybody seems to have one of these cameras, so I think that must have helped Panasonic a lot, because I think there's still talk out there, and there's like you said, everybody you seem to talk to wants to have one of those cameras and that. So, but as I said, really, really good camera still.
They say it's not good for low light. I disagree. I was at a reception they did at the Lectora User Conference. It was in a real large area of the second floor, right by a window, but it was already getting dark. And it was, I'd say, pretty dark. Maybe even as dark as this studio without lighting. I had no problem opening the ISO up to between 800 and about 16 to 6400. I was moving it around a bit. And I was shooting with the 12 to 60 millimeter now deceased lens, and it did a great job of taking shots. I mean, I got some silhouettes when I was behind people, but when light was on them, you could see their faces clearly. The colors were still reds and blues and greens. I was going, wow, this actually, I wasn't sure, and I used no flash at all. You can't, not when you're filming that kind of thing or taking pictures. You can't, the minute you start hitting the flash, they're all going to panic and run. So it was actually, I took about 200 shots. They made a video out of it afterwards with some of the shots, and it came out really well. It's pretty amazing on a camera that's considered not good in low light, how good it was without really a ton of noise. It was actually clean.
It's like, it depends what people said they want in the low light. I've found that even with the FZ1000, it's not a terribly great low light camera, but to me, it does good. It keeps a nice clean shot. If you've got decent light, as I said, don't have to have proper lighting, but when it's a bit dark and dingy, yes, it will be a bit noisy, but in most cases it will. And if you're doing that, people will have a fill light even outside to fill up some things. And yes, like the Sony does go down to next to nothing, but I've seen a lot of the examples. Yes, it does that, but I can't see any practical use, because people will still not use those shots in proper productions.
Right. No, I tell you, I think you've seen this one when you came over last. That was the Westcott Flex Light, the flat.
Yes.
Now, we took 2 of those. We bought 2 new ones, took them to the show. I thought it'd be easy to set them up. It took us like half hour to figure out, what are we doing? How do you set this up? And we're looking at different parts, and And we finally got it. Leslie went online, looked at a YouTube video, and goes, I got it. And it was easy then. We put them on the tripods. Boom. Those lights were great. We had 2 of them, and we were only at maybe not even 50% of the light. If we put any more, we'd be blinded. They're very strong, but they came out real nicely. The shots were pretty good. Some of them were dark when we were against the window. When we switched, it was pretty natural. And those Westcott lights are great. We need to get our friend from Westcott back on again and talk about what new stuff. They're always doing something innovative, so it's fun to have them on. And some other thing happened last week, and that was at the end of NAB, Blackmagic Design announced the new DaVinci Resolve 14.0. So they went from 12.5 to 14. I don't know if it's pay now. I'm not sure. I have to go.
No, you can still get a free. Well, there is still a free version.
A free version of 14.
I'll have a look, but I'm not too sure. I'll have to check that out because I was going to mention about that because there's out of NAB. I didn't think there was much came out of it, but they said about DaVinci they had the release. So.
Yeah, and 14.0 includes real world professional audio. Finally, because the audio they had was pretty lousy. Now they have professional audio that can do all sorts of stuff. You don't have to get out of DaVinci. It's right in DaVinci. And it looks really, really good. They've added more editing features, better coloring. I mean, it's for free. It's amazing. Even if you have to pay $500 to $1,000, it's amazing. That's a really good product. So I have to go down and see if I can I'm not sure if it's out yet. I think it is. I'm going to go and download it because it looks really, really good. And they said the performance is 8 to 10 times faster than the previous one, which is good. That's actually formidable. So that was a good announcement.
To have a product like that, though, that's free even in the older versions, it's just fantastic because there's somebody I knew, they've got their FZ1000, they've got their 4K footage, but they're not into it much and they want something to do some editing on. And rather than that's more than enough. Just drag a few scenes, and you've got a fade and cut. That's all he wants on it. And I said, then you've got a full, and it's got so much in it for free. And I thought, there's no other ones that, and he's a Windows person, whereas on the Mac, everybody's got iMovie, which usually will do most of that. But for Windows, there's not much out there that's free. Well, there isn't anything, I don't think.
Well, no, and Resolve and DaVinci works on Windows and Mac.
Yes. That's amazing. Right, and that's really the great thing with that. Yeah. So I've got to download that because I must admit I haven't been in it, but for what I see for the color control, it's excellent. But
it's amazing.
Have you seen though that now the Premiere Pros had an update and that?
I did, but I haven't looked at what was in it. I think it came out like right before we left. I actually have it, but I haven't looked at it yet.
Well, it's quite funny. I always just have a chuckle to myself when people talk about Final Cut Pro and Premiere, and people scoff at Final Cut and they say how much better Premiere is. I love Premiere and I love Final Cut, so don't get me wrong. Yeah. But it's just strange when the new features come out in Final Cut. Now they've got the new titling thing, the way they do the titles, which is pretty much exactly the way Final Cut does it.
Interesting. Okay.
And now you can hook up with After Effects, so you can do templates for your titles, which is the same thing that Final Cut does with motion, and then you just fill in the titles. But it's quite strange how people don't like one or the other, but then they tend to be coming to the same point where eventually they'll be the same product, I think.
I know.
But they do some really good things in that.
I'm not sure. I don't know how you feel, but I'm not sure how committed Apple is to really keeping Final Cut Pro. I don't know. They don't really make a lot of money on it right now. It's still not used heavily. I think Premiere actually is beating everybody right now in terms of use. So,
because they have some little features like that color grading, which I think is excellent because it's much easier. It's just so easy to do, putting the LUTs on it, and just little things like that would make me use that for a big project because it just makes everything so much easier. And the things that you didn't like in the past, they're fixed up, and it just works so well together.
And I love the round tripping between a Premiere and Audition for audio.
Yes.
That saves so much time. You don't have to get out of Premiere. You can go in, change your whole soundtrack or just clips, whatever you want. And the end result is really good audio without having to do get out, get back in, re-render, get out, get back in. It's just a pain. They did it beautifully. So I have to admit, Adobe with Premiere is bringing. I never liked Premiere in the old days. It's starting to look easier. I still am not crazy about Premiere as an editing tool. I think it's clunky. Because I think Final Cut's a little clunky too with their kind of two-space editor, and it's a little odd. You get used to it. But Resolve is more like Vegas, the way they do their cuts. To me, I like that better. It's a little more dynamic. But, they're all good in their own way. And I wish Premiere was as visual as Final Cut Pro. I love the Final Cut Pro visualness. Like when you look at, I don't know, I haven't looked at the new version in Premiere to see if now you can see the transitions before you apply them.
Yeah, no, you can't.
You can't. So. No, and that's beautiful in Final Cut because, and that's like Vegas. They took that right out of Vegas. Vegas, you could always see what's coming next. You go, great, that's interesting. And it's funny, Vegas was ahead of everybody in the early 2000s, 2002, 2003, and they've proceeded to quickly go nowhere.
Yeah, and it's ridiculous. And when it's from a company that was Sony, isn't it?
Well, no, it was originally Sonic Foundry, which owned Vegas and Soundforge and Acid.
But Sony got it eventually.
They did, and did not much with it.
Well, that sort of makes you think that maybe they tried to kill it because maybe they had a vested interest, and I don't know why, but you'd think of a company that has studios.
Well, they came out with Catalyst. Catalyst is okay. It's a different kind of workflow. It's not bad, but you just wonder, what was the strategy there? And then the Germans bought it, and they don't get marketing. The poor Germans, they just don't get it. They keep sending out big Vegas ads, and it has big Vegas. So what do most people think? Las Vegas, they delete it.
Las Vegas, yeah.
It's just so bad. Why are you using Vegas? Call it Magic Vegas or something, but don't call it just Vegas. People, and the filters, people filter out Vegas. So it wasn't smart. And they've been running a special every week for the last how many months? Special pricing, and it's every day. It's the same exact. They go down $50, they go up. So people are just waiting to see, okay, if maybe I'll stay with it, maybe I won't, but I'm going to hold off till it's like $100.
And the thing is, like with me and you, the things that gets me in these ads for any product is not the pricing. It's they show me something super duper motion tracking in this version. Oh, it gets me, and then I'll look at the price. I don't see $99 and then I'll look at it or whatever. I just see something that people want. Like if they did easy motion tracking on that, and you'd get and then when you get in only for $199 or something like that, and you think, that looks fantastic.
Yeah, and the other problem is when you look at the interface of Vegas, it looks old. It looks like Windows. It's Windows NT. It just looks really old, and there's not a lot of customization, and I find it fuzzy. Like the window to me is fuzzy, whereas Final Cut Pro is sharp. Premiere is pretty sharp, though they're a little fuzzy because they go a little too dark. You can change it in Premiere, but for some odd reason, it just looks badly anti-aliased on Vegas. And I was a Vegas guy for like 14 years, and now I'm just not that interested. I've lost the love of it. I thought it was one of the best products. Now I look at it, looks exactly like it did, 15 years ago. So I'm going,
15 years ago, so it was really great. But like you were saying with NT, I remember when NT came out, and that was it in a bit. And you thought, look, it's NT,
right? And now it looks ancient. Yeah,
that's right. And so that's the same thing like the Soundforge and that around that same era.
Yep.
They looked fantastic, but if you look back at them now, they look, oh my goodness, it was so damn confusing. There was so little on the screen to help you out on that. But and then back then when I first hit Soundforge, there was not a lot to put it out to because we had to do it back to tape.
That's right.
Digital set, and then it was still a hassle. And I remember having a multi-track cassette tape that did that. No, it was so awkward. And you think how easy it is now just doing it all digitally.
It's really changed.
Amazing the different changes on that.
That's true. So I don't know about Vegas. I don't know how successful the Germans will be with it. The team is still in Wisconsin, but I don't know how big a team it is. And, it was a good team. They knew what they were doing, but I'm not sure they're changing it that much. There are some new features and everything, but it still has an old look. I don't know if the renders are as clean as like Premiere. Premiere has the not only the renders, but they have the preview, which is just real time. The Mercury engine is incredible. It looks good.
It is. Yeah, I was just getting back to what you said just earlier about getting on YouTube and looking how to do something. I'll just had to, before I forget to tell you, I had an occasion where I had to move my green screen, which is one of those big roll-up things.
Yep.
And it took me back to our experience with your reflectors and how it took us 3 hours to do it. And I thought, now I'll remember that. Now you just bend your body and just twist it like this.
Yeah.
And do you know what? I just did it. It just fell to pieces into a and I was shocked. I thought that 3 hours really did. But I just thought, because I didn't know. But I thought, no, you have to just twist it like that. And just don't think about it. Just do it. And I thought
that's funny. No, we didn't take 3 hours. We only took an hour. But it was a very embarrassing hour. 2 grown-ups trying to figure out how to fold a 7-foot folding screen. And then the bad part is when Leslie walks in and gives us a picture of this little teeny weeny girl doing it like nothing.
And she had this great big high one and just did it like that in about 3 seconds.
Yeah. And then we take it to work and Clark does it in about 3 seconds. And I go, what? Well, we're the managers. That's why we're inept.
But it was just, I think it's because the sort of things, they make you do things that you're not used to doing, like bending and squashing.
And twisting, yeah.
And twisting into, that's going to break it.
It's sort of like a twist and slide under at the same time. Yeah. And it looks like it's going to break, but it doesn't.
Yeah, it looks like it does. And that's where and then that's why I thought, no, just do it. And then it went down perfectly. But it's it's like everything. And that's where the kids of these days do so well with things, because we're still in that generation where we're scared we're going to break things,
right?
So we take a bit more time.
Yep.
They don't. They will just break things, but they'll learn. They'll learn a bit quicker than we do.
That's true. Well, Jeff, I've got to get going because I've got to go to FedEx and send a lens that's kind of dead right now to see if they can resuscitate it. I want to get it out before they take off today. But it's got to go to Texas, and then they call us and tell us how much the damage will cost. I'm almost afraid to find out. I hope it's like $200-300, not like 5 or 6. It's like, oh, really?
Well, if it's 5 or 6, you'd say just leave it.
I might, because at that point it's almost cheaper to just buy a new lens. But
then if it's at that price, you don't know the chances. There could be some internal. You never know if there's any damage.
Well, they're supposed to test it. They'll test it and make sure everything works, and then at that point we should be good. But
but first if it's time, too expensive, it's still tainted in my books. I know I like getting them repaired, but when they're tainted, it's just
I know.
No, yeah, I've got to get something new now.
I know. I was already thinking maybe I need another lens, but anyway, for now, I'll let it be. And if they can repair it, I'll be happy for a while. But this Sennheiser that I have here, it not broke, but the power supply went bad on it right after I got it, and the transformer part of it, and they just replaced it for free. That was Sennheiser. They said no, it was within like 6 months it went bad. And they said no, we fixed it, and they fixed it beautifully. Out of Connecticut.
Say, if you see a cheap GH5 with a lot of gaffer tape on it, with a 12
with a taped on lens, wires hanging out of it, that might be mine. Yeah. Oh man. Well, Jeff, I'll see you next week on the show, and maybe we'll get a guest next week. Not sure. Danielle's working on it. But anyway, well, you have a great weekend, and for all you people watching, we hope you enjoy the show, and we'll see you next time on Tech Down Over. Have a good one, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye for now.